On the journey of self-cultivation and self-discovery, each of us seeks the truth and enlightenment. Life is like a tapestry woven from threads of truth and deception, kindness and pretense. Walking along this rugged path, we must face countless challenges, not only from the outside world but also from within ourselves. Zen and the teachings of Buddhism emphasize the importance of seeing through appearances, not just with the eyes but with a pure mind. When the mind is clear, we can perceive the true nature of everything around us. In this life, we will encounter many people, from those who can uplift and encourage us to those who may obscure the light within us with their falsehoods. The story we are about to share is one such journey. A person seeking enlightenment steps into life with sincerity and a deep desire to understand the true nature of humanity. Along the way, she meets many people with different faces, each imparting a valuable lesson. Through each encounter, she learns not only to recognize others but also to reflect upon herself, thus cultivating her mind and becoming wiser and more compassionate. We hope that through this story, you will not only learn how to recognize the deceitful and the false, but also realize that every encounter in life is an opportunity to cultivate your mind, to become a better version of yourself. In a small village by a gentle river, there lived a merchant who was renowned throughout the region for his kindness and generosity. He frequently organized charity events, distributing food to the poor, and had often come to the aid of those in distress. His good deeds were well known, and the villagers regarded him with great respect, seeing him as a bodhisattva, someone willing to sacrifice for others. One day, a young nun on a journey in search of truth stopped at this village. With a pure heart and a deep desire to learn, she sought to meet the famous merchant, hoping to learn something from him. The merchant greeted her with a warm smile and kind words. He spoke of his charitable works, his boundless generosity, and the compassion he always maintained. The young nun listened with respect, feeling fortunate to meet such a noble soul. However, as she stayed in the village and observed more closely, the young nun began to notice contradictions. The merchant's employees always appeared fearful, frequently being scolded, and sometimes punished unjustly. Many of the customers who came to buy goods also seemed dissatisfied. They whispered to each other about how the prices were always higher than elsewhere and how they were often pressured to buy unnecessary items. The young nun was confused. What she saw seemed completely contrary to the image of a kind person that the merchant had presented. She decided to confront him to uncover the truth. One afternoon, she went to meet the merchant and gently asked, "Sir, why is it that your words about kindness do not match the actions I have witnessed? You say you always help others, but why do I see so much suffering and injustice around you?" The merchant appeared momentarily taken aback but quickly regained his composure. He replied that what she saw was simply a misunderstanding, that business required firmness to succeed, and that he could not please everyone. But the young nun, with the wisdom of one on the path of practice, was not easily swayed by his excuses. She continued, "Sir, if your words do not align with your actions, then what value do your words have? True compassion is not just in words, it must be reflected in every action, even the smallest ones. If your actions cause others to suffer, then what do those kind words mean?" The merchant fell silent in the face of the nun's sincere words, unsure of how to respond. She could see the conflict in his eyes, but she also sensed that, deep within, he was beginning to question himself. The young nun left, her heart heavy with thought. She realized that the consistency between words and actions is not only the foundation of trust but also the measure of sincerity and character. A person who speaks beautiful words but acts in ways that harm others is merely putting on a facade, their words hold no real value. From this encounter, She also learned a valuable lesson. To truly understand someone, we must not only listen to what they say but also observe what they do. Words may be beautiful, but actions are the truth. And to become a true practitioner, she must always question herself, ensuring that her words and actions align, so that every step on her path of practice is genuine, not deceiving herself or others. In the days that followed, the young nun spent much time reflecting on what she had witnessed. She understood that the merchant was not a bad person, but simply someone lost, caught up in the whirlwind of fame and profit. She prayed for him, hoping he would recognize the contradictions within himself and find the path back to sincerity. The lesson of consistency between words and actions is not just about the merchant's story, but a great lesson for life. It reminds us that to build trust and to become a person of value, we must live truthfully with ourselves and others. Words and actions must harmonize, reflecting our true selves, so that every step we take on this path is one of sincerity and compassion. On her pilgrimage to seek the truth, the young nun arrived at a small town nestled between towering green mountains. There, she heard tales of a famous scholar, highly respected by the villagers for his profound wisdom and insightful teachings on the principles of life. With a heart eager to learn, she sought out the scholar. From the moment they met, he showered her with endless praise. He admired her purity, the grace in her every gesture, and the courage she displayed on her journey to find truth. His compliments were as sweet as honey, enchanting anyone who heard them. At first, the young nun felt a sense of pride, but with a mindful heart, she did not allow herself to be swept away by the words. She remembered her teacher's advice: praise can be a trap, leading us into the maze of the ego. Thus, she quietly observed the scholar, trying to see through the superficialities and discern the true nature behind his flowery words. After their conversation, the scholar invited her to stay a few more days to attend his lectures and further explore his profound philosophies. She agreed, but remained cautious. In the days that followed, she noticed that although the scholar continuously praised her, upon closer observation, she realized something unusual. These praises were not unique to her; anyone who met him received similar compliments. One evening, as the moonlight bathed the courtyard of the temple, the scholar invited her to a private conversation. He proposed a tempting offer: "You have talent and wisdom. If you collaborate with me on a grand project, we could benefit many people, and you would also gain great personal rewards." The young nun understood that this was the moment to confront the truth. She gently asked, "Sir, are your praises for me sincere, or are they merely a way to make me lower my guard and trust your proposal?" The scholar appeared slightly embarrassed, but quickly regained his composed demeanor. He explained that his praises were meant to uplift the spirits of others and foster connections, so that they could achieve greater goals. But the young nun, with her clear heart and sharp intuition, saw that these praises did not come from sincerity but were a tool for manipulating trust. She responded calmly but firmly, "You say you praise to encourage others, but excessive praise without sincerity is merely a trap for the ego. It makes others believe in their own false value and leads them to make mistaken decisions. On the path of practice, we need truthfulness, not just with others, but with ourselves." Faced with the nun's direct words, the scholar had no choice but to admit the truth. He bowed his head in apology, acknowledging that sometimes he used flattery to achieve personal goals, and promised to change his behavior. The young nun left the town with a light heart, though she was still troubled by the lesson she had learned. She realized that excessive praise is not only a trap for the one receiving it but also a sign of insincerity from the one giving it. In this world, many people are easily swayed by flattery, losing their mindfulness and straying from the true path. Upon returning to the monastery, the young nun spent many days and nights in meditation, reflecting on the lesson. She understood that praise is a double-edged sword. If not used wisely, it can harm both the giver and the receiver. Sincere praise is a reflection of love and respect, but excessive praise is merely a tool for manipulation and exploitation. She also realized that, in daily life, everyone needs encouragement, but such encouragement must come from a place of sincerity, not from selfish motives. To be a true practitioner, she resolved never to use praise as a tool of manipulation, but only as a means to express genuine love and respect. The lesson on excessive praise also serves as an important reminder for all of us. On the path of practice, we must be mindful and cautious of unwarranted praise. We must distinguish between genuine praise and excessive flattery, so that we do not fall into the maze of the ego, and always maintain humility and truthfulness in every action. Looking back on her journey, the young nun felt she had learned a valuable lesson not only about sincerity in praise but also about how to protect herself from the traps of the ego. She understood that, in walking the path of practice, it is not only mindfulness that is needed, but also humility and sincerity in every word and action. With this lesson, she continued her journey, filled with determination and unwavering faith in the righteous path she had chosen. On her journey through the small villages, the young nun arrived at a peaceful countryside, where vast rice fields stretched endlessly, and humble thatched houses dotted the foot of the mountains. The people lived simply and were deeply connected to one another, but she soon realized that beneath the tranquil atmosphere, there were whispers and gossip, tales of speaking ill of one another. One afternoon, as she rested beneath the shade of an ancient Bodhi tree, she met a middle-aged woman with a gentle face, though her eyes concealed something indescribable. The woman quickly struck up a conversation and began telling the nun about life in the village. But it wasn't long before the conversation turned into criticisms of this person and that person. She spoke of the neighbor's flaws and mistakes with a tone filled with disdain and judgment. The young nun listened with a heavy heart. She understood that such negative words not only harmed others but also reflected the speaker's inner insecurity and lack of self-confidence. After the woman finished speaking, the nun gently asked, "Ma'am, do you think these words might hurt others? And do you think we can truly find happiness by spending our time speaking ill of others?" The woman was momentarily surprised but quickly explained, "I am only speaking the truth, I'm not gossiping. Everyone has their flaws, and I just wanted to share it with you." The nun smiled, her gaze full of compassion. She said, "In our words, there is not only content but also the intention behind them. Even if you speak the truth, if it hurts others, is it worth it?" The Buddha taught us that speech is one of the three karmic actions, and it can either create merit or demerit. Words of gossip, even if they are true, if they come from envy or judgment, will only increase suffering for both the speaker and the listener. The woman fell silent, seemingly reflecting on the nun's words. The nun continued, "When we speak ill of others, it may be a manifestation of insecurity within ourselves. We use words to cover up our own shortcomings and fears. But this doesn't help us grow or solve the issue, it only burdens our hearts." Looking into the woman's eyes, the nun saw a glimmer of remorse. She added, "Do you realize that when we focus on the flaws of others, we miss the opportunity to examine and correct our own faults? Instead of speaking ill, why not use that time to cultivate our hearts, to become a better version of ourselves?" The woman lowered her head, her voice trembling. "I had never thought of it that way. Perhaps I have been too focused on the flaws of others and forgotten to reflect on myself." The nun gently responded, recognizing this is the first step toward change. The Buddha taught that when we speak words, Of kindness, we not only bring joy to others, but we also nourish compassion within ourselves. Every word we speak is a seed, and if it is a good seed, it will bear sweet fruit. If it is a bad seed, it will produce bitter results. Let us choose words that are wholesome, so our hearts are always nourished by goodness. From that day, the woman began to change. Gradually, she gave up her habit of speaking ill, replacing it with words of encouragement and support. Those around her noticed the positive change, and the atmosphere in the village became more harmonious. The young nun continued on her journey, but her heart was filled with joy, knowing that a seed of compassion had been sown and was beginning to sprout. As she traveled, the nun continued to reflect on this lesson. She understood that the habit of speaking ill not only harms others but also tarnishes the soul of the speaker. It is a manifestation of insecurity, jealousy, and lack of self-confidence. To overcome this, each person must be clear about the impact of their words and learn to use speech to sow good things. Words are an important part of daily life, and when used properly, they can become a powerful tool to build peace, love, and understanding. On the other hand, if left unchecked, words can become sharp weapons, causing suffering, division, and hatred. Therefore, each person must remain mindful, listen carefully, and think before speaking, so that every word brings benefit and joy to others. Through this story, the nun learned that mindfulness in speech is not only a responsibility to others but also a responsibility to oneself. By keeping her words pure, truthful, and compassionate, she not only protects others from suffering but also guards her own soul from harmful karma. She continued her journey, carrying with her the valuable lesson about the power of words and the importance of mindfulness in every action. And with each step she took, she reminded herself that every word, every action is an opportunity to plant the seed of compassion and nurture a pure and peaceful heart. On her pilgrimage through distant lands, the nun arrived in a small town beside a peaceful river. This town was renowned for its talented artists, people who could shift from one role to another, bringing joy and entertainment to the community. In this town, there was a famous artist known as the Artist of 1,000 Faces. This artist was not only exceptionally skilled in acting but also had the ability to change his tone, gestures, and style to become different characters. Each time he appeared on stage, he amazed the audience with his fluid transformations, leaving them in awe of his creativity and versatility. Curious, the nun decided to meet this multifaceted artist to learn more about him. When she arrived, the artist greeted her with a friendly smile and an open demeanor. He quickly boasted about his ability to transform, describing how he could become anyone he wished simply by changing his costume or altering his speech. As the conversation unfolded, the nun noticed that, despite the artist's extraordinary talent, deep within him was an underlying sense of insecurity and lack of self-confidence. He seemed dissatisfied with his true self, always attempting to hide his genuine nature behind layers of masks. She gently asked, "Sir, does changing and becoming so many different characters bring you more happiness? And does this transformation truly reflect who you are?" The artist paused, slightly embarrassed, but then replied, "I do this too. Bring joy to the audience. They come to see me perform, to witness the characters I create. And I take pride in that." The nun smiled, her eyes full of compassion. She said, "Indeed, you bring joy to many, but I sense that deep inside, there is something within you that is incomplete. Living in falsehood, even if it is to please others, can strip away authenticity and wear down the spirit." The Buddha taught that truthfulness is the foundation of peace. When we live in accordance with our true nature, we will find serenity in our hearts. The artist fell silent, as if the nun's words had touched a hidden corner of his heart. She continued, living with many faces may bring fleeting pleasure, but over time, it can disconnect us from our true selves. We cannot find true happiness if we are constantly hiding our authentic nature. The conversation continued as the nun shared one of the Buddha's teachings on truthfulness. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught that a truthful person is one who lives without deceit, without attempting to hide or distort the truth. Truthfulness not only helps us live righteously, but it also fosters trust and love with others. The artist began to reflect deeply on the nun's words. He realized that for many years, he had been so consumed with creating perfect images for his audience that he had forgotten to face himself. He felt a profound emptiness in his heart, an unease he had never recognized before. The nun advised him, sometimes, to find ourselves, we must let go of the masks and have the courage to confront the truth within. No one is perfect, and we do not need to pretend to please others. Truthfulness, though it may make us vulnerable, is the path to freedom and peace. After their conversation, the artist began to change. He no longer tried to embody so many different characters, but instead focused on expressing his true self. He shared with his audience the journey of rediscovering himself, the challenges and trials he had faced. This not only brought him relief, but it also created a deeper connection with his audience. The nun continued her journey, carrying with her the invaluable lesson about the importance of truthfulness. She understood that in life, there are many times when we feel the need to pretend to be accepted, but this only distances us from our true nature. Living truthfully is not just an ethical act, but also a journey to rediscover ourselves, so that our hearts may be free and at peace. Through the artist's story, she realized that everyone carries masks, but the important thing is knowing when to let them go. Truthfulness not only helps us live a more meaningful life, but it also allows us to form deeper connections with others, creating relationships based on trust and love. As she left the small town, the nun looked back at the path she had traveled, her heart filled with gratitude for the lessons she had received. She knew that each step and every story was a seed helping her grow and move closer to enlightenment. And she was certain that her journey would continue, with new lessons awaiting her on the road ahead. Throughout her journey across many lands, the nun had the opportunity to meet people from all walks of life. One day, she arrived at a large town, where a famous leader was known for his toughness and decisiveness, yet had one distinct flaw: he never admitted to being wrong. The people in the town admired him for his strong leadership, but many quietly worried about this trait of his, sensing that his stubbornness and refusal to accept fault could lead to undesirable consequences. Curious, the nun decided to meet this leader to better understand the men behind the reputation. Upon being invited, she noticed that he was a man of stern appearance, his eyes exuding confidence and pride. Throughout their conversation, he frequently mentioned his accomplishments and the bold decisions he had made to develop the town. However, when the nun delicately raised situations where he might have made a mistake, he immediately reacted strongly. "I never make mistakes," he said firmly. "Every decision I make is based on careful consideration, and I am always right." The nun listened in silence, her gaze thoughtful. She could feel the leader's arrogance and immense pride. After a moment of reflection, she gently spoke, "Sir, I do not deny your achievements. But in life, no one can avoid mistakes. The Buddha once taught that admitting our mistakes is not a sign of weakness, but rather an expression of maturity and courage." The leader was slightly surprised by the nun's words, but he remained firm in his stance. "I have always believed that steadfastness and never admitting mistakes is the way to maintain respect and authority. If I admit fault, wouldn't that diminish the respect people have for me?" The nun smiled, her eyes filled with understanding. She replied, steadfastness and authority may earn people's admiration, but humility and the ability to admit one's mistakes are what truly help build trust and genuine love. When a leader dares to admit fault, they not only show inner strength but also inspire those around them, encouraging them to live truthfully and face their own shortcomings with courage. She then shared a story about a king from ancient times, who once made a fateful mistake that led to a significant defeat in battle. Instead of denying responsibility, the king publicly acknowledged his mistake in front of all his soldiers and citizens. This act did not diminish his authority; on the contrary, it earned him greater respect and love from the people. They saw in him a shining example of humility and courage. Upon hearing this, the leader fell silent, reflecting on the words of the nun. She could sense that her words had begun to stir something within him. She continued, "Admitting our mistakes requires great courage. It asks us to overcome pride, confront ourselves, and learn humility. The Buddha taught that only when we dare to acknowledge and correct our mistakes can we grow and make progress on the path of practice." The conversation continued as the nun elaborated on the benefits of humility and courage in accepting mistakes. She emphasized that a truly strong leader is one who is not afraid to face their own flaws and is willing to correct them, setting an example for the community. The leader listened attentively, and gradually, he began to realize that perhaps his rigidity and pride had been preventing him from advancing further in his leadership. He felt a sense of relief upon understanding that admitting his mistakes would not undermine his authority, but could actually help him build stronger and more authentic relationships with those around him. After their conversation, the leader began to change his approach to leadership. He no longer stubbornly denied his mistakes but learned to listen to others' opinions and was willing to admit when he was wrong. This change not only earned him greater respect from the people but also brought him a sense of peace and satisfaction within his heart. The nun left the town filled with gratitude for the opportunity to learn another valuable lesson on humility and courage. She understood that in life, no one is perfect, and no one can avoid mistakes. What matters is that we are willing to acknowledge and correct our faults, becoming better people and living meaningful, compassionate lives. On her next leg of the journey, she carried with her the lessons of humility and courage, eager to share them with anyone she met along the way. For she knew that everyone could learn and grow from their mistakes, and that humility was the key to unlocking the door to enlightenment and inner peace. During her journey of spiritual practice and the search for truth, the nun arrived at a small village nestled deep in a valley. This village was known for a healer who was highly respected by the villagers for his medical skills. However, beneath the exterior of a man devoted to healing, the healer concealed a dark secret. He exploited the pain and weaknesses of his patients for personal gain. The villagers, though aware that his services were expensive, continued to seek him out. Whenever they fell ill, trusting in his abilities. The story of the healer quickly caught the attention of the nun, and she decided to visit him to better understand the men behind the reputation. Upon meeting the healer, she found him to be a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and a demeanor that radiated confidence and arrogance. He welcomed her politely, but his attitude of disdain became apparent when he learned she was a nun. Throughout their conversation, he was quick to boast about his healing talents and emphasized that to receive the best care, patients must pay a deserving price. The nun listened silently, her gaze fixed upon him. She recognized that beneath his falsely compassionate exterior was a heart clouded by greed and selfishness. After a while, she gently spoke, "Master, your healing abilities are indeed admirable. But I wonder, does compassion play a role in your work?" The healer furrowed his brow, slightly taken aback by her unexpected question. After a moment of silence, he replied, "Compassion. I believe that compassion cannot replace skill and knowledge. Without skill, compassion cannot cure anyone. The nun smiled softly, her gaze both gentle and profound. She responded, "You are right, skill and knowledge are important. But compassion is the essence of every action." The Buddha taught that compassion is the foundation of enlightenment and liberation. A true healer not only heals the body but must also know how to comfort and soothe the soul of the patient, helping them overcome both physical and emotional pain. She shared with him the story of an ancient healer, who was not only skilled in medicine but also renowned for his boundless compassion. This healer never asked for any payment from his patients, whether they were rich or poor. He believed that healing was a sacred mission and that helping others was his way of practicing compassion and accumulating merit. Upon hearing this, the healer was momentarily surprised, but he maintained his firm stance. The compassion of that healer is indeed admirable, but in the real world, no one can live solely on compassion without needing money, he said. The nun quietly nodded, understanding that the healer had become accustomed to a materialistic world, where human worth was often measured by wealth and power. She did not blame him, but continued to share the profound meaning of compassion in Buddhism. She emphasized that compassion is not only about helping others but also about freeing ourselves from the bondage of greed and selfishness. When we act with compassion, we not only bring happiness to others but also purify our own hearts, thus attaining peace and enlightenment. Gradually, the healer began to sense the depth in the nun's words. He started to realize that profiting from others' suffering not only harmed them but also hardened his own soul. He understood that if he continued living this way, he would never find true happiness. After their conversation, the healer began to change his behavior. He learned to listen and empathize with his patients, willing to help them without focusing on monetary compensation. This change not only earned him greater respect from the villagers but also allowed him to experience joy and peace in his own life. The nun left the village with gratitude for witnessing such a miraculous transformation. She understood that compassion is the heart of enlightenment and the path to true happiness. As she continued her journey, she carried this valuable lesson with her, eager to share it with anyone she met along the way, on the path of practice and service. On her journey through many lands to learn and share the philosophies of Buddhism, the nun arrived at a peaceful rural area where a school for young people was located. The school was run by an elderly man, known as Master John, who was renowned for his ability to impart knowledge and life skills. However, there was one thing that few knew: Master John often avoided responsibility when mistakes occurred. The nun decided to stay at the school for a while to learn more about Master John and his methods of teaching and management. In the early days, she noticed that Master John was a man of profound knowledge, with an engaging teaching style, and was well liked by the students. However, an incident soon unfolded that drew her attention to another side of his character. One morning, as the students were preparing for a performance to raise funds for the school, some organizational errors caused the event to be disrupted. The students and their parents were disappointed and came to Master John to understand the cause, hoping for an explanation and a solution. However, instead of acknowledging the mistakes and offering a resolution, Master John blamed the students and staff, claiming they lacked responsibility and had not done their jobs properly. The nun quietly observed, sensing the disappointment and sadness in the students. She decided to meet with Master John to discuss the matter. In their conversation, she gently said, "Master John, mistakes are inevitable in life, but what matters is how we face and address them. In Buddhism, accepting responsibility and correcting mistakes is part of the practice and self-improvement." Master John, though somewhat irritated, listened out of respect for the nun, and replied, "I understand what you're saying, but as a leader, sometimes I must maintain my image and cannot afford to lose credibility in front of my students." The nun smiled softly, her gaze kind but profound. She continued, "Master John, credibility does not lie in never making mistakes, but in how we handle them. The Buddha taught that only when we dare to face our mistakes and take responsibility for them can we truly grow and develop. The courage to admit faults does not diminish your credibility, rather, it will increase the respect and trust your students have for you." She shared with him the story of an ancient king who had made serious mistakes in ruling his kingdom. Instead of avoiding responsibility, the king openly acknowledged his errors before his people, apologized, and pledged to correct them. Thanks to his courage and honesty, he earned the respect and support of his subjects, helping the kingdom flourish. Master John listened intently, and his heart began to open. He realized that avoiding responsibility not only damaged the relationship between him and his students but also prevented him from growing and improving as a person. It was the courage to face one's mistakes that led to true development. After the conversation with the nun, Master John decided to change. He publicly acknowledged the mistakes made during the event, apologized to the students, staff, and parents, and committed to working together with everyone to resolve the issues and improve future event planning. This change not only increased the respect and trust from the students and parents but also allowed Master John to experience a sense of relief and tranquility in his heart. He understood that the courage to face mistakes not only helped him grow personally but also created a healthy learning environment where everyone could learn and mature together. The nun left the school with gratitude for having witnessed such a meaningful transformation. She understood that, on the journey of spiritual practice and service, facing and accepting responsibility for one's mistakes is an essential part of the path. It is the way to enlightenment and self-perfection, a valuable lesson that she would carry with her throughout her life. The journey of the seeker of enlightenment has come to an end, yet the journey within the consciousness of each of us continues. Through this story, we have explored together the 7 signs of those who are not truthful, the inconsistency between words and actions, excessive praise, the habit of gossiping, inconsistent behavior, the unwillingness to apologize, exploiting the weaknesses of others, and avoiding responsibility. But above all, each of these signs serves not only as a lesson to recognize others, but also as a mirror to reflect upon ourselves. In Buddhist teachings, every challenge and every person we encounter is a part of our spiritual path. Each individual is a lesson, and each lesson is an opportunity for us to cultivate compassion, develop wisdom, and build patience. Dishonest and wicked people are not our enemies, but rather our teachers, guiding us to see and face the weaknesses and shadows still hidden deep within our own hearts. As the ancients have said, this life is an unceasing journey. On this journey, the light of awareness, compassion, and wisdom is the torch that guides us through every temptation and every deception, leading us back to truth and inner peace. When we learn to recognize dishonesty, it is not to separate ourselves or turn away, but to cultivate compassion, to know how to love, and to help others overcome their own darkness. We not only protect ourselves from harm but also contribute to making the world around us a better place. Our journey is the journey back to ourselves. Every step on this path is a moment to learn how to live with mindfulness, how to love, and how to accept. Enlightenment is not a destination but rather the moments when we live with sincerity, with love, and with deep awareness of ourselves and the world. Let us continue walking, with eyes wide open, with hearts open, and with clear minds. Let the light of enlightenment guide the way, leading us on this journey. And when we live in awareness, we will see that life is not just a series of passing days, but a beautiful journey, where every moment is an opportunity for us to become the best version of ourselves.